Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, today I have my friend Rebecca Kleha with me, who is a health and nutrition coach. And we're going to talk about a lot of things that I know I sometimes struggle with, because I know sometimes our identity ends up getting tied to things like how much we might weigh. And that can have an impact on how we view the world, how we interact with other people. And I know for myself personally, my weight has fluctuated up and down. And obviously, as I've done that, I've had different thoughts about myself and about the situation that I am in life. And so whatever you do, the fact that you're listening to this right now means that there's something in today's episode that you need to hear from Rebecca. So with that, let's roll that episode. You are jamming with Jason Mefford, where you hear inspiring interviews with some amazing people. Some are famous, some may seem ordinary, and they are all doing extraordinary things to positively change the world. Sometimes it's just you and me having an intimate and authentic conversation about how you can change the world around you and rewrite the story of your life by being more authentic, accepting and loving yourself more, and spreading love to others. Since really, all you need is love. And what the world needs now is love, sweet love. We discuss all aspects of self-improvement, growth, and so much more. Great content, insightful advice that's practical and helpful to anyone that listens. You're always eager to come back for more and share with your friends and family, since you learn something in every episode. So sit back and enjoy the easy listening while you feel seen and heard in this informative, authentic, and entertaining podcast. Now, let's roll that beautiful podcast footage. All right, Rebecca, I'm excited to be with you today. I've got to say, you're one of my favorite people. I know that we haven't known each other for very long, but there's something about you that just really resonates with me. So I'm excited that we're together.
Yeah, I feel the same way about you. It's like one of those like kismet things, right?
Yeah. It's like, where have you been all my life, sister? So maybe just to start with, just give people kind of a thumbnail of who you are and what you're doing. And then I want to jump into kind of your story and how you kind of got to where you got, right? So maybe just start off with that. Just give people just a couple minute quick who you are, and then let's get right into it.
Sure. Yeah. So I am thrilled to be here. I'm really excited. As you had mentioned, I am a health and nutrition coach, but I know that there's a lot of health and nutrition coaches out there. So I have a couple different things that I specialize in. One is working with high achieving women who are just kicking ass and crushing it in their life. They have most things, most days under control, right? So they run their family, they run their life, they run, the business, or they're in a leadership position in their company, and everybody sees them as a powerhouse and they just have everything together. But on the inside, there's something that they're battling secretly, and they're tying their self-worth to their scale. So, this is a woman who is waking up every morning and either fighting the urge or giving into the urge for could be years of stepping on her scale and looking at what the number is. And whatever that number is, it's going to dictate how her entire day goes, right? So how she's going to interact with people, how she's going to interact with her family, her coworkers, strangers even. If that number has gone up, even 3 pounds from the day before, that could completely throw her whole day and her whole mental health off kilter. And maybe it affects a presentation, or it affects how she interacts with her kids, or it's it's something that goes down to the core of who she is and becomes her identity. And she doesn't really know how to cut the tie with the scale. So I work with women who are just crushing it, but also battling the silent issue. But then I also have a background of more than 15 years in branding and advertising. So I was on the teams who were creating these brands that are reeling people in and making them feel certain ways, especially lifestyle and diet brands. I worked on Weight Watchers. And so the colors, the images, the way that they're positioning things on the screen, all of that good stuff, the words that they're using, it's reeling them in. So you're getting a really a false sense of hope to a point, and so I'm helping women to cut their tie with the scale to get to the root of their issue, and then also become aware of what their environment is doing to them, so we can redefine what perfection is. Everybody wants the perfect body, but what is perfection? Different for everyone.
And that's funny too, because there's a lot of stuff that's set up in there. I mean, there's these whole ideas and stories that are just bullshit, right? Like, I mean, you look at something like BMI, right? And it's, you do the calculation. It's like, I'm supposed to be like 140 pounds. There's no fucking way I'm going to be 140 pounds again, right? I mean, that's what I was in high school when I was running 8 miles a day in cross country, right? I'm not going to be that anymore. And so I need to cut ties with BMI necessarily, right? Because that's an unrealistic expectation that, unless I want to spend 4 hours a day in the gym, and I'd rather do a lot of other things than spend 4 hours of days in the gym. Right.
Right.
But this is so true. And especially like you said, I mean, there's, and I'm sure, sometimes it's 3 pounds, sometimes it's 100 pounds, right? Because everybody's in a different state. Maybe some people need to lose, maybe they're 100 pounds overweight, right? It doesn't mean that they need to lose all 100 pounds, but when you get to that point, obviously there are some health issues, right? That start coming up, and there's an identity associated with that. But to me too, like you said, it's sometimes the people that it's just 3 pounds. It's like, I know some people and they're like, their world starts falling apart at 3 pounds or 6 pounds. And it's like, no, you still look good. I have no idea that, it's like, you're still looking really good. What are you talking about? You're fat, right? But people jump to 3 pounds and now all of a sudden they start kind of, feeding that identity of I'm fat, right. Where everybody else is looking at you like, girl, you could stand to add a few pounds, right? You're looking pretty scrawny.
Right. And I call a lot of the weight that women really beat themselves up over. So it's one thing if you want to, maybe you need to lose 100 pounds because of health reasons, right? And you still want to be body positive and you still like who you are, to a point, but you need to lose weight for health reasons. But then you also have the women who just really beat themselves up over those 5 or 6 pounds. You go out to eat the night before with some girlfriends, you have, a couple drinks, you have an amazing time, you have all these memories you're making. Maybe you didn't drink enough water during the day as much as you usually do. You get terrible night's sleep. You step on the scale the next morning and you're 5 pounds heavier. So I call that not real weight. Not real. Women can carry, depending on how much you weigh in general, they can carry up to 13 pounds of water weight. So somebody carrying 5 pounds from day to day, I mean, it's natural for a woman to fluctuate 5 and 6 pounds up or down every single day, depending on what you eat, depending on what you do, how you take care of yourself. So, you go to holiday parties, right? And the holidays are just around the corner. So that brings a lot of anxiety up for women. How am I going to get past the stress and all the cookies that I have at work and all this stuff, or you stress out about going out to lunch with your coworkers or taking a client out because you're not going to be able to be on your diet, right? Or you might have to eat off limits food. And then you step on the scale and you see those couple pounds and it just rips your world apart, and it's not real weight.
Well, yeah, I like that you brought that up because, like you said, there's water weight. There's also intestinal weight, right? Like literally,
right,
you might have to let some shit go, and
right,
that could be a few pounds right there.
right.
I mean, depending on if you're backed up a little bit, and yeah, because there's the normal fluctuation, and so I know you talk about kind of cutting ties with the scale. I haven't gotten on the scale and I don't know when, but I know I've lost weight because I just, I actually this last week I had to go buy some new pants, right? Because for guys too, it's like, there's 34, I got up to a 36, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of hard for me because I was like, man, um, actually, in fact, I think I almost got up to a 38 for part of it. But anyway, so I was back down to a 34. Most pants I was in a 34, but now I've noticed I need a 32, right? Because we have two-inch sizings, right? So for some,
Yeah.
actually 33 would probably be great now. But I've been noticing, hey, most of my 34 size pants or shorts are a little too loose, and I'm having to scrunch the belt up a little bit too much. So I know I'm making progress, but I don't know how much I weigh, right? So is one of the things to help people on this, and again, folks, we're talking about weight, but we're not talking about weight, okay? And we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there, but it's is not having kind of that daily habit and beating yourself up of getting on the scale every single day. I mean, because I'd heard a long time ago, if you're gonna weigh yourself, make it something like once a week, because you don't want that daily fluctuation to end up letting yourself, beat yourself up over it too when it's not real weight.
Right. And one thing that I say to the women who I work with, and it's probably one of the hardest things, if I talk about my program and I talk about what we do, and we're going to have to do this, you're going to do this, and you're going to feel this, and you're probably going to, expect this. And then I come in and say, and I don't want you to step on the scale for the whole time you're with me.
Well, then how am I going to know? How am I going to know if I'm making progress?
Exactly. And, you just see, even if they don't say anything, even if you don't have the audible gas, you just see this look over the face, like, all of these things start cycling through. Like, can I run? Like, if I just click off my kid and leave, or can I just have to get out of here. Like, it's the fight or flight feeling, because it is women. They say, how am I going to know if I'm going the right direction? And God forbid, what if I go the wrong direction and I can't stop myself, because maybe I'm putting on the weight, but I've had a lot of stuff going on and I don't notice that I'm doing it. So the scale is what keeps me on track. And I'm like, it's not though. The scale is what's holding you back. So, I say, take that scale and put it in the trunk of your car. so you can't get to it in the morning, right? And see how you feel every morning. The anxiety is going to be high in the beginning, but once you make it through a couple weeks, you don't want to see that number because you know what it's going to do to your day.
Well, and I know too, because you were talking about water weight, but I've heard too, and I've experienced it myself, if you haven't been working out, let's say, and now you start working out, the other trap that a lot of people get in is they start losing weight and then they start gaining, because they're gaining muscle mass, they're losing fat, they're losing inches, but they're starting to gain muscle mass, which is important. Yes. But that obviously is weight. And so sometimes people just, again, they start beating themselves up when, no, that's good weight, right? It's like replacing fat with muscle is good.
Right.
But they start beating themselves up. And I think it's funny because it's, I'm guessing, because like when I've weighed myself, I usually want to be consistent. So I would do it naked in the morning, first thing. But it's interesting, and when you do that and then you start having those negative feelings, the first little bit when we wake up is some of the most important time. And it would seem like if you're spending that time beating yourself up because of your weight, then you're setting kind of the intention and your emotional feeling for the whole rest of the day.
It's funny that you said that because, when you first open your eyes, the first minute or two that you're coming out of dream state, right? Your body has reset itself essentially. It's, cleaned itself out, all your cells, everything is, the circadian rhythm is undone to a point, to be general about it. Whatever you did the day before, it healed itself. And the first couple of minutes you open your eyes and you come back into consciousness, if you start berating yourself, and going through your laundry list of what you don't like about yourself, when you have an opportunity of a clean slate to set your intention, as you mentioned, with something positive and putting a positive vibration out there, it sets you up for your entire day. So if you wake up 5 minutes later, you go step on the scale, you've just completely put the energy out there into the universe that you don't want to be happy, right? You're inviting almost misery when you don't want to invite misery, but you're bringing it in and you're bringing in all these negative feelings. So you're already digging yourself out of a hole before you even go down and have a cup of coffee.
Yeah. And it sets ourselves up to not have that self-love that we all need to have, right? Because we're beating ourselves up, we're telling ourselves that we're fat, we're stupid, we're whatever it happens to be, right? And again, this particular point, we happen to be talking about weight, but there's lots of other things like this in our life that are things, I think, like you said, where we're keeping a secret, right? Everything tends to look fine to everybody else who's looking at us, but there's some secret that we have that we're afraid to share with other people, or something, right, that we're kind of holding back on and beating ourselves up about, which is a really interesting thing, right? Because again, most of the people that we look up to, they don't think very good things about themselves.
Right. Isn't that, it's so interesting, and that's one thing I struggled with. And I know we'll go into my background, but people looked at me like I had everything together. I had an amazing career. I had great friends, great support. Everything that I wanted looked like, I had. But, I had young women looking up to me, people who, and I know we'll go into mental illness and all that, good stuff, juicy stuff to talk about. But I felt like an imposter, right? I had, even up until probably 5 years ago, I would have women, especially young women, come to me and say, I can't believe you have everything together. You have all this stuff going on, all the every stories that we tell each other and we tell ourselves. But I felt like I was an imposter, that I was lying to them because I didn't have it together inside. My worth was not what I was telling women that their worth should be, right? And this is before I got into coaching. But once, I feel like, you eventually become who you're meant to be. We call it dharma or whatever our life's path is. And that's where I'm at. And so I always was a coach, I think. I attracted people to come and tell me their stories and tell me, their whatever they wanted to get off their chest. And I was great at giving advice. I was amazing at it, but I wasn't following any of it. So that feeds into the imposter syndrome.
Well, yeah, because when we realize that other people are thinking certain things are happening, but they're not really happening in the background. Right. That goes back to the whole self-worth thing too. Right. And sometimes it shows up in kind of some tricky little ways, I'm working at loving myself more, but, a lot of times I've been guilty of using self-deprecating humor.
Yes.
Right. Because I never want to make fun of someone someone else, right?
Right.
Maybe making fun of stereotypes or the
Mhm.
certain ways, groups of people might act, or, some of the things like that is different than
Mhm.
kind of personally attacking somebody, unless you're doing a comedy roast, right? And then they expect it and they're like, bring it, tell me what a piece of shit I am, right? I mean, that's just, but that's a specific, kind of area for doing that. And so I would tend to use some self-deprecating humor, right?
Yeah.
Make it light, but kind of making fun of myself. And actually this week, I said something and my friend said, never say that again.
Oh,
And it was one of those where it was kind of like a kick in the balls for me that I needed to hear, because
yep.
it wasn't, I have to be careful about the words that I'm saying,
Yeah.
because what I'm saying, right, becomes my identity. And so,
Right.
like you said, if we're 5 pounds overweight and we keep saying, "Oh, I'm so fat," ha 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 ha, ha, right? Well, you're still saying it.
Right.
And little things like that end up starting to reinforce to where our identity ends up becoming that. And so
Right.
if we've told ourselves, I'm fat, I'm fat, I'm fat, I'm fat, oh, I'm so ugly, oh, I'm so stupid, oh, I'm so whatever,
Yeah.
right, that we're reinforcing, after a while we believe it. And then
Hmm.
that's why too, I mean, so many times people have a hard time losing weight,
Yes.
because their identity has been built into, no, I'm overweight. And so they can't let that go, because there's usually other things that are behind it.
Right. Right. And then that's when self-sabotage comes in. If you're going to sign up for a program, or you're going to, you set out with a goal, a lot of women don't realize that they have this voice in the back of their head that says, why even try? Right? Because you haven't been successful yet. So why would you waste your money? Why would you waste your time? Why would you waste your energy? And there's this feeling of, well, if I don't try, then I can't fail. That's, everybody feels that across the board with anything that scares them, anything that puts them out of their comfort zone. So I feel that women hold themselves back, and men, when they want to get into weight loss or self-love or self-improvement, of fighting that voice of saying, well, why do you think this is going to work this time? Why waste your time?
Well, and I'll say too, this is not just a women issue.
No, no, it's
It's a
not.
man issue. I've gone through all this stuff too. We just don't talk about it, right? We don't
It's
say I'm fat, like women say out
right.
loud, but we're still thinking it too,
Hmm.
right? So this is a man issue as well.
Right.
So women, you can't just hijack this issue, right? It affects all of us.
We can share. We can
Yeah.
share.
But but it just tends to be vocalized more.
Yes.
Right. And so, weight is especially one of those things that tends to be vocalized more, but we all have our secrets
Yes.
as well, right? And sometimes we are terrified for people to be able to find out what those secrets that we have actually are. So we're going to go there, but before we go there, let's kind of back up a little bit, because I your story, I think, is interesting too. On, people know what you do now,
Hmm.
but let's talk a little bit about how you got there and why you got there, right? So you already kind of mentioned that you're branding, marketing. So
Yeah.
let's kind of go back. Tell us your story, Rebecca. How
Oh,
did you get to doing what you're doing? Because again, this is going to help people, see themselves in you and realize that you're not alone, right? I mean, people
yeah.
are going through very similar things to what you're going through.
Right. And it's true. And, you know, something that I had to fight for my self-doubt was, maybe somebody looking at me and saying, how can she understand what I'm going through when she looks like that? And I'm not oblivious to that.
Mhm.
Or how can she have any idea what I've been through And that's why I'd like to tell my story, because it doesn't matter what somebody looks like on the outside. It's all what's happening here and what's happening here. So you can have the same experiences as someone else. You might not look like them, and, your background might be different, but you could still be on the same journey and the same path. And that's what I think women have to keep in mind, because it's so easy to judge, right? Everybody judges. So that's one thing that I had to get over when I started working in the specialty with coaching that I do, because after I realized that, I'm like, it doesn't even matter, right? It's, can somebody help you get to where you want to be? So, wow, this goes back.
And I think with that too, right, is somebody might look at you right now and say, oh, here's an attractive, fit woman. And honestly, I mean, for everybody that's listening audio, Rebecca could kick my ass. I mean, she is a badass. Okay. It's like, hey, I'm not even going to try to fight with you. We're never going to get in a fight. But yeah, so people might look at you and say, well, I mean, you got everything going on, girl, right? How can you help me? I'm 100 pounds overweight. You don't know what I feel like. Right. But it's always interesting. So let's get into the origin story, because a lot of times, people that look great now, we're 300 pounds overweight. One of the guys that was on the podcast a little while ago, he was, I think, almost 300 pounds overweight. And I was like, dude, kudos. Fuck, he looks great now. It's like, and so just because we see somebody as they are right now doesn't mean they don't understand us.
Right.
They just might be a few steps ahead in the journey.
Right. And, I'm 5'2". I'm small, and there was a point in my life that I was probably about 30 pounds heavier than I am. And that might not sound a lot to somebody, but when you're
on
5'2",
it's a lot.
It's very different, and that was something that, I can touch on that too, but that was at a point in my life that I actually was more okay with myself than I was any other time, because I lived in Scotland and it wasn't as pushed on me with the media and other women as it is here in the US. So, which blew my mind that I actually was okay, and then as soon as I got home, all of the unraveling had to happen, right? All of everything that I fell back into had to happen.
Well, and that brings up a great point too, right? Because especially, here in the US, we're very body focused, and there's a certain ideal that from marketing, which again, we can kind of get into because you've got background in that, of what's considered to be ideal, where there's other places in the world, Polynesia, they want big women. The bigger the women, the better, right? I like big butts, and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny, right? I mean, there's I just have to throw little things like that in every so often.
You sing, I'm not singing.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe we'll have to have sing along later. Okay.
You don't want to hear that.
No, but it's a lot of it is cultural based as well, right? And so even again, I mean, the body image stuff, like you said, even in Scotland, there's no big deal there, right? Nobody's was getting on you about that. You didn't feel that pressure, where we do obviously feel that pressure here in the US, because we're marketed to and bombarded with these marketing messages to get people to buy product, right? And so a lot of times, I mean, same thing. I worked in the corporate world for a long time, helped make people fat, right? By some of the products that our companies sold.
Yeah.
And you usually have to try to make people feel a certain way in order to get them to buy your product. So it's kind of like this vicious cycle, and again, I mean, some of the people probably have malicious intentions. Most of the people don't,
Right.
but it's kind of interesting. So let's talk a little bit about some of that background and how you ended up getting here. Because I think also, your decision to leave corporate, for some people, it's a good thing to leave corporate. For other people, it's good for them to stay there. It's like, this is different for every person. But so let's get into that a little bit more too.
Yeah. So I would say that my disordered thoughts started actually when I was a kid. I mean, I can remember back to being 8 years old and sitting on the school bus next to one of my girlfriends and comparing the size of my thighs to her. I mean, an 8 year old, that's, you know, you don't realize how impressionable kids are. You say it all the time, right? But you don't realize it. And this didn't come from anybody I lived with. My mom wasn't like this. It's not like I had role models that were pushing this image on me. It all came from just people around me, like, general people that maybe I didn't know well, or the media, So, and the thing is that I'm very muscular. My bones, my muscle structure, everything. I'm just a short, strong, muscular person. So you can't shrink skeleton. And that took me a long time to realize that things just weren't, the size of my thighs just aren't going anywhere. That's just what they are. And it took me a long time to appreciate that too. But, fast forward into my teenage years and growing up in the era of the supermodel and, Cindy Crawford and Elle McPherson, Kate Moss, the chic skinny, right? And Victoria's Secret angels. That was when they first started too. And so I remember my best friend and we idolized them. That was just who we wanted to be, but trying to keep up with somebody like that. And we went on all the weird diets, and we had no idea what we were doing. So eating cereal 4 days, 4 times a day. If you actually know nutrition, we were just putting carbs and sugar into our body. But in our mind, we're just eating cereal that only had no fat in it. So this was something that went through my entire life, and in high school, I had very disordered eating, but I hid it very well because I was muscular. I ran track. Um, I restricted my calories and my eating. And, that's when I started the excessive working out. But nobody knew. No, not even my family, but it became my identity. So it wasn't something necessarily that I was ashamed of because it was who I was. Even though I didn't really talk about it, I talked about it with my best friend, but she was in the same path at that point that I was. So it wasn't anything weird. And then fast forward to I was about 16 or 17. I was misdiagnosed I was bipolar, but I was misdiagnosed as just depressive. So you wrap in a whole other layer of your brain chemistry and hormones and going through high school, which is just, I would never do it again to save my life. People say, I'm going to go back and do it all. No, nope. No, I don't. But
me either. No way. No way.
If I could do it all over again, it'd be my 40s. That's where I'm good, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Winding 2 years. Let's do that again. But having that layer of mental health and not having necessarily the support of anybody, my mom was fantastic with it. She really was a huge support system, and she's the reason why I think I didn't turn out bad. I didn't end up in a ditch somewhere, because it was her. But without the support of hearing the media and being bombarded with that and struggling with my identity of what I should look like versus everybody else who's my age, and then going through all the emotional issues of being, misdiagnosed. And it was just, honestly, I'm surprised I'm here, quite honest. Getting through my 20s, I lived, and I don't know how I lived because, not being treated correctly with medication, which I'm not saying that medication is for everybody. I'm not somebody who pushes meds. But if you need to be on something, then you need to be on it. And I didn't have that support or the support, on the outside, the environmental, and being manic, trying to, like, I'm more of a manic person than I am depressive. And so, and you and I were talking before, we started that I don't look at being bipolar as a negative thing. And, it's funny is I never have. It's more of like a superpower
Yeah.
because it fuels your creativity. It fuels you, it's propelled me forward. It's given me my drive. And yes, there's setbacks to it, but it's really what has been the foundation of who I am. So I don't look at women who have a mental illness of any kind as it's not something that's holding them back. It's you just have to learn how to work with it. I don't know if that makes sense. Use it.
Yeah, it does. And let's talk a little bit more about that, because I think too, with something like bipolar, right? There's the manic and there's the depressive phase of it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, everybody's different. Some people spend equal time, some people spend more time in one than the other, right? I mean,
Yep.
I think most, at least people that I've known in the past that have had bipolar have been more on the depressive side.
Mm-hmm.
And so, those are the people that it tends to come up with so much more, because people are like, why are you depressed all the time? And you're
Right.
so dark and you're so whatever, right? And it's like, so for those people, it's easier to kind of see or spot it, right?
Right.
And those people have a hard time, getting out of that rut and coming out. But the people that are like you, that are more on the manic side, we look at manics and think, oh, type A, high achievers, looks like they have everything in control, right?
Yep.
Because you're just always going, right?
Yep.
But then when you crash hard. And
Yep.
people and those crashes are usually hidden from everybody. It's like, where'd Rebecca go for the last week? I haven't seen her. Well, because she's in a depression and can't get out of bed, right? But then all of a sudden it clicks and then you're back, right? And
Yeah.
it's like nobody really kind of notices. But I think, too, especially with things like weight or other things, right? I mean, people that are more on the manic side, they're always trying all the different diets and they're going all
Yep.
in and they're spending 5 hours at the gym and they're doing all these things, and society is saying good going, right?
Right.
But you're killing yourself by doing that, I think, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
how does that work? Because again, we can talk. I have gotten depressive, but not from a diagnosis standpoint. But I've experienced manic periods of my life, depressive periods of my life as well. So, but how is it like for you? And like you said, to kind of experience that,
Mm-hmm.
because again, some of the people that are listening have probably been misdiagnosed too, and they may, be able to go, hold it, that's the way I feel too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's funny and what's sad the feelings that I get from, telling somebody, I don't hide it. I won't say that I broadcast it
Yeah, it's not
because
like you're wearing it on your sleeve. It's like, hey, everybody, feel sorry for me because I'm bipolar.
right.
Or using it as an excuse, right? Like
Right.
some people will try to use things like that
Mm-hmm.
as an excuse. Oh, it's because I'm, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I can't be any different.
Yeah. And that's the last thing I ever wanted. And, I absolutely hid it at work because I didn't want, say I had a bad day or somebody was an asshole, you're right. And I called them out on it, or I just have a moment. The person probably was an asshole, or the moment was legit. But I don't want somebody to come back and say, oh, well, that's just because she is who she is. Right. Like I
Yeah.
didn't want to have, that's not what I want to be known for. I want to be judged on my character and how I treat people and the kind of person that I am and my values, not be labeled from something, and that goes back to being labeled with weight, right? Or it goes back and being labeled with, maybe your culture, or even just being labeled as on your age. Like I always say that, the people in their 20s, and Gen Y, all of those, they have a label just like people who are in, Gen X have labels. So I didn't want to be pigeonholed into a label. And, I was never one of those people that went and disappeared for days. I'm the one who would just kind of go inside myself and get quiet. and do whatever I had to do. But those were the times that I ran through my laundry list of why I was a failure. So why couldn't I lose weight when I didn't need to lose weight? Why couldn't I, stop doing something, stop stepping on the scale? Why couldn't I just eat what I'm supposed to eat? Why couldn't I not rely on a diet pill? Why do I have to keep going back and back to different programs that never worked because they were telling me that it's different now, right? They tweak their marketing and they tell me it's different, new and improved, and I can do it. So change of color and it's a whole new program.
Oh, yeah.
But that's what my cycle was. And I said that I started out in marketing and public relations and advertising over the course of my career. And I was involved with creating these campaigns, and I've worked on Weight Watchers when Sarah Ferguson was the spokesperson. So we're dating myself here. We're going back early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Yeah, probably like 2006 or so, 2005. And I remember her sitting with me. It was just the two of us. And she says, you know what? She goes, I owe everything to Weight Watchers because they gave me my life back. I can fit in my clothes. I enjoy life. I enjoy food now. I don't have to worry about not, stepping on the scale, all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, well, one, I was, kind of conflicted. I was like, yes, you're absolutely correct, because I was on Weight Watchers at the time. I was going and standing in line at lunch, starving myself so I could be weighed in front of a room full of people. I mean, like when you think back at that kind of stuff, what?
Well, it's like wrestlers, the same thing for a weigh-in, and they'll like go sweat it out so that there is, and then they go and hydrate and they're 5 pounds heavier again. But it's almost the same thing when you think about it that way. As far as an analogy, it's like everybody lining up to get weighed. There's some accountability behind it, and some of that stuff I understand too. But probably a lot of the anxiety and other things that people are feeling too may not be that great with that process as well. But
I mean, kudos to a program that makes you feel that it's okay to go put yourself on display, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I would have never done that for any other reason. But yeah, I remember her saying this, and part of me was like, yes, you're absolutely correct. It's amazing. It's a lifestyle. And the other part of me is thinking, I helped to create the messaging and, the branding and everything that goes behind it that's making you feel that way. So, the colors that, if you look at their website, which I just went and looked at it a couple of days ago, I had, looked at Weight Watchers for years. And I was on and off of it for 10 years. I'll say that. So the Kool-Aid was drank for a long time. But, even if you look at their sales page, it's blues and it's purples, and, it's where you go to check out and actually pay, that's the blues, because that invokes trust, right? And, all of these feelings of you're doing the right thing. And then you go down a little farther and you have pinks and blues and oranges, and they represent courage and energy and excitement and compassion and health. And so they're all, just the colors alone are getting you excited to think that you're going to succeed. And I'm not saying that you're not going to succeed. Like, I don't want to, if somebody's on it, my goal here is not to make you feel bad about it at all. But what Weight Watchers won't tell you is that only 11% of people who go to the program actually are, air quotes, success stories, because they're banking on you being a return customer, because it's $1 billion business, and businesses make more money off of returning customers than they do new customers. So, that was my life for a long time. And what's funny is having that kind of control was intoxicating. It made me feel like I had some kind of power. If you, a lot of people say, I don't understand what you're saying, with the branding. And I say, think about Subaru. So Subaru is one of the best brands ever created. Whoever came up with that, I don't know which agency came up with that, but it's phenomenal. So when you think of Subaru, what do you think of? You think of protection, safety, love. The commercial that came out where the car was crunched up, and then they fast forward and they say they survived, and then it turns into a heart. So right there, people who don't even know anything about the car want the car because they want the emotion that came off of it. Diet brands and lifestyle brands, are the same exact way. So, rewinding back into my 20s when I was in that world, and then everything I was going through, personally, I was always conflicted, but it made sense to me because so was everybody else I was with, right? So women in leadership positions, they would talk about the same thing. They would commiserate saying, oh, I'm fat. Oh, I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to take this diet pill. So to me, it wasn't anything that was weird. It wasn't wrong. And they're doing the same thing I am, 20, 30 pounds older or years older. Maybe they don't need to lose weight. Maybe they do, for health reasons. And it was just this cycle that I went through. And when I was going through it, I didn't know I was going through it because it was life. And I think that's what a lot of women, especially the type A's out there who, portray this confidence and are moving up the corporate ladder and are owning their own business and are just running lives and crushing it. They don't know necessarily that there's anything wrong with it because it is who they are until they have the moment where they sit down in silence. And silence can be your worst enemy because that's where the real feelings come out. And then you take them and you either emotionally eat, you binge eat, you beat yourself up over that. You feel shame and guilt. And why am I so weak? And why can I do everything else in my life great, but I can't control myself with this? And then you take it all like a parachute. You take it all, you squish it into a little ball and you put it back in the sleeve, and then it starts to pop back out and it popped back out. And then eventually it's out again and you go through it all again. So you emotionally, you binge eat, you beat yourself up, and then you stuff it back in there. And then you get to a point that it no longer fits. So it starts to spill out into your life in other ways, your relationships, how you talk to people, how your performance is at work, how you treat your kids, the relationship you have with your kids. Are you starting to put a wedge between you and them? How, all the young women in your life, how are they seeing you? You might not come out and say things, but like I said, kids see everything and they feel everything. Their ability to feel energy and what comes off of you is much more than a lot of adults. So you go through this vicious cycle that just is never ending. And either it's normal for you until you're alone, and then you don't know what to do. And then you go on Weight Watchers, or you take a pill, because when you're like I was, I didn't have time for long-term things, right? So I wanted the pill. I wanted the shakes. I wanted the promises that were being made to me, because if I just got that one thing under control, if I just lost that 5 pounds, then everything else would fall into place. My life would be perfect. I would be able to wear whatever I want. I could eat whatever I want. My relationships would be amazing. But that's not what it is, because you could lose 5 pounds. You could lose 100 pounds. If you haven't fixed what's inside, you're still going to see that person when you look in the mirror. That doesn't go away. So,
well, like you said, I think,
yeah,
and I think too, with it, that's why weight loss is such a tricky thing, and that's why people continue to bounce around, right? I mean, people will go through, they'll lose weight, everything's great, and 6 months later they've got the weight back again, right? And so then they get the next pill or the next shake or the next exercise regimen or whatever it is, and they lose some of the weight, and then 6 months, a year later, they go back, right? Because they've never fixed or done that internal work. Like you said before, it doesn't matter what's on the outside. What matters is, what's in your head and heart is what you pointed to, right? So for people that are listening audio wise, but and I think it's interesting too, because that you know we crumble everything up and then we shove it back down in the sleeve, right? And so that's why to the rest of the world it looks like we have everything together, everything's
Yep.
fine, right? And we keep doing that, but the problem is every time we do that, it starts getting bigger and bigger and
Right.
bigger and bigger. And like you said, at some point, it won't all fit back in that sleeve.
Mm-mm.
And so because of that, that's then when other people start to recognize it or see it
Yeah.
in the way that you're reacting, because it's literally overflowing.
Mm-hmm.
You can't compartmentalize and shove it down anymore. And eventually everybody gets to that point, right? To where you can't hide it anymore. But I wanted to go back too, because what you were talking about with Sarah Ferguson, I thought was really interesting too, where she said, I didn't realize, she'd used the product, it sounds like, before she was brought in to be a spokesperson as well. So she'd actually gone through
Yeah.
and done it. But again, you can take her life. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I would never want to be in the spotlight like that woman.
No.
I mean, that is right. I mean, we already have enough body image issues and everything else,
Right.
but to be in the public eye like she
Right.
is, and to have people say, I'm sure, very mean things about her,
Yep.
and I can't remember. I mean, she has a couple of kids, if I remember right. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously that changes women's bodies,
Yep.
and so there's just some physiological things there too. But to the point, like you said, I'm glad that Weight
Mm-hmm.
Watchers helped her get her life back. But why, it's almost like there's a thing before, right? It's like,
Right.
why is our society telling her, why is she believing that if she's 20 pounds overweight, that her life isn't hers?
Exactly.
Right. And so little things like, well, I can fit my clothes again, I can wear what I want.
Superficial.
It's superficial, right? I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
and here's another thing, right? Like with women's clothing sizes.
Oh,
Okay, those are all fake numbers, folks,
they're
and
fake.
you don't
They're
realize that
so
either.
fake.
What is a size 12 now used to be like a 20, and what is a 20 now used to be a 30. I mean, they're moving these numbers all around,
Brand by
and,
brand.
and it's brand by brand as well, right? And so what if you're, but so many people, again, we believe it. If I'm not a size 2 or a size 4, well, again, what if your body's not like that?
Right. You're
You
not
know,
meant to be that.
you're not meant to be that. You got hips, right? And if you got
Right.
I mean, hips are a good thing.
They are.
I mean, but if your body happens to have hips, you're never going to fit into some of those smaller sizes, right? Because they're just not made that way. And so what if instead we could get rid of some of those stories?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't have to be a size 10. It's all right to be a 12 or a 14,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or it's okay to carry a little bit extra weight.
Mm-hmm.
It's not who I am as a person.
Right. Right. And that brings in my mind for two separate things. So one, women like to use, and I was very guilty of this. They like to use clothing as motivation, right? If they're trying to lose weight. So they'll buy something that they're like, okay, when I hit my goal, I'm going to be able to fit into these jeans or, the swimsuit or whatever. Problem with that is, and I'm not against using clothes for motivation, but when you have such a big goal that you can't necessarily wrap your head around because you either haven't reached it before or you've reached it and you're back to where you started. So you already have the feeling of, failure. Um, every time that you can't get to it and you see that clothing sitting there for a year and you haven't been able to, get to it, but you're healthier than you were when you started, you still think you failed. So if you pick a piece of clothing that's like one size smaller and you use that as the small milestones, so maybe it's one pant size down, when you hit that, you get another piece of clothing. So you see the progress as you go on your journey, instead of having this pair of pants that are 10 sizes smaller than what you are, that, I just threw away or donated a pair of jeans that I've had for 8 years. They didn't fit me when I bought them. They didn't fit me. They've never fit me. They still have the tag on them. And if they ever would have fit me, I would have looked like I was sick. There's no way. So, and I forgot I had them. So I thought that was funny that I still was hanging on to those when I didn't, they moved with me from Florida years ago and I still couldn't get rid of them. But going back to Sarah, I know we were looking like 20 years ago, but if you follow her, she put all her weight back on.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't necessarily a lifestyle, because diet brands aren't in it for the long haul with you.
No. And it's, like you said, most of the programs, most of the pills, most of the shakes, it's all external, superficial stuff that, again, if you don't get to the inside work,
right,
you're gonna keep kind of going back and forth and back and forth. And I think, again, that's, kind of where you're at now, is helping people do that inside work so that they can have it for the long term. They can be healthy for the long term, right? And I'm guessing too, even trying to break some of the paradigm shifts, right? Like I'll just take me as an example, right? BMI, like I said, I think 5'9", right, is literally telling me I should be like 140 pounds.
Yes.
Ain't gonna happen, right? Like I said, I was that when I was in high school, but I got up to probably 240. That's way more than I need to be. I mean, I could feel the physical effects, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't, like I said, I haven't weighed myself in for whatever, but I must be back down around between 180 and 190 right now. And long term, probably staying anywhere between 165 and 175 is probably a healthy weight for me. Right. And I must be, like I said, I'm making progress. I'm not weighing myself. I could tell that I was having to cinch the belt up a lot more. My, shorts were loose, so it was time to go buy some new stuff this last week. So that's good. And where it goes, from there, who knows? But it's, again, not listening to what everybody else is telling me that I have to do, and not having my personal identity tied to a particular number, or a particular waist size, or a particular whatever, right? Is trying to help decouple some of that stuff, which is what you're helping people to do.
Yes. And, I don't say I'm a weight loss program, because we're not going to count calories, and we're not going to weigh ourselves and, all the stuff that most diet programs have you do. There's no specific types of food that are off limits. But when you get everything in balance, and I can talk about my program a little later, but when we get everything in balance, natural weight loss happens. So yes, it could be looked at as a weight loss program, but it's a holistic body program that weight loss can be a byproduct of it.
Well, and I think that's what's always so interesting to me, is that when you do that inside work, there's unintended consequences for everything we do, right? And if you focus on the weight loss, but you don't have the inside game under control, like you said, you just yo-yo back and forth. And a lot of people have been that way, right? Versus doing the inside work, all of a sudden you get the unintended consequences, right? So I'm a poster child of that. I'm not a poster child, but I'm not out there, I try to watch what I eat a little bit, make better choices, but it's like I just had a burger and fries yesterday, right? But I maybe have one a month, right? And just doing little things with me and my mental and emotional health and trying to love myself more and drinking more water, but again,
Mhm.
I'm not really exercising
Mhm.
like I probably should be just from a health perspective, but I'm still slowly losing weight without focusing on trying to lose weight.
Right. And that's the weight that'll stay off
Mhm.
because you're not trying. So you don't have to try to keep it off.
Yep.
It's just part of your life.
Just part of my life. Well, so how can people reach out to you and talk a little bit about kind of how you're helping people do this? I mean, we've given them, obviously it's not a pill or a shake, it's more
Mhm.
about doing some of the inside work. But what
Yes.
is some of that kind of stuff, and how do you kind of do that makes you different from everybody else?
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, it's not a diet program. We go through mindset work. So first we look through, we get to the root of why you've been yo-yo dieting. Is that, and I'm not gonna, let me start off by saying that I'm not a licensed therapist, so I don't want anyone to come in and think that we're gonna start doing therapy work. There's definitely some counseling that can go into it, but it's more of guidance and talking about my experience and using, cognitive behavior therapy techniques, like um, writing stuff down and working through them. And, I, it's funny is I don't require or have people journal and I don't have them meditate because if that's something that you want to do and it works for you or you want to try it, absolutely go for it. They are some great things that you can do. But a lot of people, especially where I find people who are like me, you get bored and you can't do it. So then you feel like you failed. And also with journaling, a lot of times we get in the momentum of writing down what's wrong and just constantly reinforcing the bad, the negative thoughts and the self doubt because we think that we're purging it, right? Putting it down on paper, we're purging it, we're getting out there. But what you're doing a lot of times is you're not then going into the positive parts and you're not talking about gratitude and you're not talking about the changes, the positive changes that you're seeing. So you have this notebook full of negativity that you open every day and you continue to go through. So, if somebody wants a journal, we talk about it and we talk about the best way, the most positive way to do it. We go through stress management. So, it's foundational stuff, but it's not sitting there, with nutrition. I also talk about sustainable nutrition. I'm not going to teach you necessarily about, you know, the foundations of you should eat 3 veggies a day, or whatever we learn, right? So instead, I'm going to teach you nutrition and I'm going to teach you how it affects your body, how it affects your weight, the not real weight stuff, right? Or how it affects your brain. A lot of women say I have brain fog. There's so many things connected to your diet and your lifestyle that could be bringing on that brain fog. And it's not necessarily because you're tired. It's everything is connected. So we look at the basics, food, stress management, sleep, all that good stuff. But then I connect it to the bigger picture, and we really get in there and we dig in there. And I tell women, you're going to be uncomfortable. Like in the program, this is not something you're going in and, like the next day you're going to be like, I love myself. This is great. That's not how it works because to get to the root of why things haven't been working for you for years, maybe your whole life, that takes some digging because you remember that parachute,
Yep.
and you'd stuff it down. We need to pull that all out, right? And we need to address that. And then we need to say why, when you are triggered at work, somebody says something, you go home and your first thought is to binge on everything in your fridge, right? Or to eat all the snacks that you buy your kids that are off limits foods, but you would never touch until you're triggered. So let's talk about that trigger and how we can put steps in place that when you are triggered, you don't go and clean out your fridge and then feel shame and anxiety and think that you failed. So it's a holistic approach using, it's really simple. It's actually simple. But what I say is it's not easy because it's going to make you uncomfortable and it's not a quick fix. So,
Yeah, because it's always, it's taking you time to get to where you're at. It takes some time to get to where you want to go,
yeah,
right? But that's why everybody wants the pill. They want the shake. They want the instant gratification. But that's why they get short-term results,
right,
but they never fix the long-term. Right. So again,
right.
if you just want short-term results and get into the wedding dress, fine, go do a shake, starve yourself for a few weeks, and you're going to get into the dress.
Yep.
But after the wedding, you're never going to wear that dress again, right? Because then you kind of go back to being what you were and what you were doing before, and your life is going to go back to that. But it's making those slow changes to your life every day by getting some of these better habits, by looking at stuff, what's triggering you, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of it in my, I see not just for weight, but for a lot of things, the stress and anxiety that people have are big triggers, and you're being bombarded with it all the time. And if you don't understand how to manage yourself emotionally,
Right.
you're not going to get through some of these things, because you're going to continue to go back to the binge eating or yelling and screaming at somebody,
Right.
or whatever these things happen to be, of reacting to a trigger instead of responding and doing things differently. And until
Right.
you get out of that, until you learn some of these things from people like Rebecca, you're not going to get out of it. You're just going to keep yo-yoing, or still being on this merry-go-round that keeps going and going and going and going and going. So I think it's fabulous what you are doing.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. I love it. I absolutely, I get so much joy and pleasure out of, you know, I had a client who just texted me the other day and she said, we call it, non-scale victories. And she's like, non-scale victory, pair of pants that I haven't been able to, zip up in months, maybe even last year. And I could zip them up today. I just tried them on, and it's stuff like that that you have to recognize the small wins because they're not small. We've just been told that they're small, because we're not seeing the huge weight loss. And, I had people often ask me, what was your catalyst? And there's never like an aha huge moment. It's probably a series of pivotal moments, but I would say my biggest one was meeting a woman in my mid 30s, early to mid 30s, and she loved who she was. And she didn't have what society would think is the perfect body. She was fit, she was a coach. She actually turned into my personal trainer and we became very good friends. But I envied her so much because she was just so content and happy with who she was. And then I found out like a year later that she went through her past mirrored mine and she just worked through it and became who I wanted to be. So the way I run my program is I want to embody who she is. And because of her, I've gotten to where I am. Now, I'm not going to say I don't have days, right? That I look at myself and I'm like, oh, but the difference between me 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even, is that if I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, normally, in the past, I would have focused on that. Everything would have revolved around that. But now I can look at it and be like, wait a second, what? Whatever. I'm talking crazy here. I know that doesn't matter. And I just move on. So that's how I measure progress is you don't have things can still creep in. You're still human, but it's the way you deal with them. It's the tools you have. So in my program, it's to give you the tools to not beat yourself up when you have those moments, those speed bumps, but to not go so far down the rabbit hole that you start thinking you failed and you have all the cycle of terrible thoughts. And, it's saying, you know what, I had a moment, or you know what, I ate dessert for dinner, or I had a couple glasses of wine, or I had a burger. Okay, how did I feel during that? I enjoyed every bite. You know,
Mhm.
I'm not stepping on the scale tomorrow, so I don't know if it's making it go up or down, and I'm going to move on. That's what life is. And that's what you want to put out to future generations, is that living your life is okay. And that natural weight loss can happen once everything is in balance. If weight loss is a goal, it's actually not a goal for everybody. So my program works with both types, of people. And it really is just getting down to the root of liking who you are and being okay with who you are and being okay with your so-called air quote, flaws, because only you see them as flaws. Nobody else does.
Yep. Well, and that's a great way to kind of end. I mean, it's we've been talking about weight loss, but we haven't been talking about weight
Right.
loss. So go back, listen to this again. But it's I love what you said there at the end. Natural weight loss happens when you are in balance.
Yeah.
And most things in life that you want will naturally happen when you are in balance.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say that again. I'll say that again, right? That pretty much everything you want, right? It will just naturally happen when you are in balance.
Yep.
So, all right. And there's more to that. but we can't talk, we can't get into all of that today. That's a whole other 2-hour conversation.
Yeah.
But Rebecca, thank you for coming on here. I know, I'm sure a lot of people that are listening are like, man, she's pretty cool. I want to connect with her. How's the best way for people to kind of reach out to you and get to know you, learn a little bit about some of the tips or tricks that you're doing and how you're helping people?
So the best way is my private Facebook page, because then I'm going to share, like you said, tips, my story, and there's a group of women in there who are going through the same exact thing as, the women who want to join it. So it's called Life Beyond the Scale for High Achieving Women. And it's a private Facebook group. So it's a safe space. You can say whatever you want. You can ask me questions. I'm available on, DM. I offer 30-minute free calls, for a one topic free call to go through something if you have questions. There's information about my program in there. So lots of good stuff. And it's also a support system. It's a place that you can feel safe, and you don't have to pretend that you're somebody else like you might in the rest of your life.
Well, and I think that's what's most, what is so important too, because a lot of us, most of us, are out here fighting the good fight every day.
Yeah.
And we think we're the only ones going through this. We're the only ones that are thinking the way that we're thinking. And we think everybody else is looking at us. Those secrets that we have, right? That are literally kind of eating us from the inside out. But there's groups like this, Life Beyond the Scale of High Achieving Women, where there's other people going through the same thing. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, it is so freeing to meet other people who are going through the same thing that you are.
Right.
Right.
And
there's somebody that I just connected. I've known for a long time, but I got a much deeper knowing of who they are and what they're going through this last week. And we joked that we're twins, right? Because it's like, thank you. There's so, because we're in this group with everybody else, and we're kind of looking around like, damn. It's like little me, but she was going through and experiences and things very similar to me as well, and just knowing that there's at least one other person out there and being able to talk to them and share experiences, there's huge value in that. Right? Because you don't have to fight the good fight alone. There's plenty of other people around here who want to help you, but we just have to have that courage to reach out and do it. So yeah, go get in Rebecca's Facebook group, because she's pretty cool. I promise she's not pretty cool. She's really cool. Well, thank you for coming on
Yeah,
here. And like I said, there's a lot more in this than what was there soup on the surface
there
of,
is.
of
There is.
this.
As with everybody has their stories, and you just have to embrace your story and enjoy the journey, right? Not necessarily the journey of life, but the journey of your transformation, whatever that may be, whether it's weight loss, whether it's whatever you are aiming to do in life. Finding like people puts the spark of possibility out there and make something seem a little more attainable.
Yep. Perfect. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
all
Love
right.
this.
All
Yeah.
right.
And if you ever need me again for a different topic,
Well, we've
let
got
me know.
lots of other ones that we can end up going down then as well. So we will be doing that very
Lots
soon.
of rabbit holes, right?
Lots of rabbit hole, and I love rabbit holes. So we'll have to do a rabbit hole edition too. So
We will. Oof, I could get in some trouble.
yeah. All right. Well, go out, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the podcast. See ya.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening. The fact that you listened to this entire episode means you got value and others will too. Do me a favor and leave a 5-star review with comments and then share with others. You can also check out all of my videos on my YouTube channel and my website, jasonmefford.com. This podcast is primarily for education and commentary and does not represent professional advice. Views and opinions expressed on this show are that of the individuals and not of their respective organizations.